I've seen things.
Well,
Next time I see her.
I mean,
is it the sunshine?
Yeah. This way.
Yeah.
Yes. Alright, okay guys, we're going to go ahead and get started with the Finance Committee meeting this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend that we call that to order.
second.
Thank you. And first thing is we're going to, everybody had received via email September 2014 reports, and pretty soon we're going to be into the end of October. It came by email. About 2 weeks ago, Dave Lewis sent it via email.
Oh, the one.
From 2 weeks ago, yeah. So in about 2 weeks, we're going to get another set. So has everyone had a chance to review it? And if so, if there's any questions on the top, and if not, I'd like to have Stacy just kind of give a brief summary of it, and then kind of allude to where we are as we head towards the home stretch of October.
If you guys open up to the packets that I provided, you can just sort of follow along. The September reports are pretty good. The income tax is up 2% still, so just about 2%. We're doing pretty good there. I expect a little bit more of an uptick with, we did just have the subpoena program, so, and I did see pretty long lines in there, so I think we should do well going into the end of the year. Also, the health is still up, well, under budget, I should say, about $230,000, so we're doing well there. Then you can follow along in your books that I passed out. The general fund, we're looking at, you know, we've done well. We're still deficit spending. However, we have, you know, we've stayed steady. We expect carryover of about $500,000 going into 2015. We expect carryover of about $1 million. Then to continue on a little bit. We don't have a deficit until 2017, so I do think we're doing pretty well. The biggest thing in the general fund is, you know, we've just got to pass those income taxes that we'll need reapproved in 2016. So that's really why you see the deficit on there. It's just based on we need the 3/10 and the 7/10 income tax renewals. Street fund, that's looking great. You guys all heard Mike's update last night. He's doing a great job as far as grants and all that for the city. Water fund, well, we all know the position we're in the water fund, and we talked about it last week. Today, I mean, just keep in mind for everybody, we are deficit spending as we speak. You know, we had to have that transfer to the water fund, so, you know, in my eyes, every dollar we spend is too much based on our current collections. And then 2015, we'll still be expecting, even with that transfer, we'll still be expecting a $185,000 deficit right now. The infrastructure fund is still holding steady. We're doing well. We've got about $256,000 in there for 2014. That money's we've already budgeted the majority of it for 2015. We're gonna spend every penny of that $390 increase in that water bill on capital projects. The sewer fund's looking a lot better than how it's been the last couple of reports. So I do just want to report that us getting those bonds, you know, it has paid off, and we have a deficit. We do still have a deficit looming in 2017 that we will need to address. And keep in mind the EPA projects that are looming over our heads. So I don't want to make it seem like there's no issues there, but as far as today goes, in September month, we are doing well. Did anybody have a specific question on the month of September?
Stacy, I do want to mention this microphone here. We're talking about, you know, not only the large meter program.
Yes.
The residential coming here. Those will provide us much more accurate readings, which, as Mike has said, is correct as de facto phrase. 2017 safe to, know we use the word loosely, safe to assume that should those be accurate, that we get more accurate readings. Really, it'd be 2018 when we're really gonna probably see the real true deficit that we need to address.
In the sewer fund?
Yes.
Yes, I could say yes. The only problem is if I looked at next year's estimated what we know today of what the EPA is going to require us to spend next year, that current deficit in 2017 will be significantly higher, probably $200,000, and ongoing compounding to make those debt payments. As of today, yes, I think that's a valid answer that, I think we could wait it out. But if what happens in our negotiations, which to my knowledge is near set in stone, that we would need to move at the latest on the sewer by end of 2015 to be able to move forward as far as supporting those projects that we're going to be required to pay for.
Tim?
I would,
In sewer.
in sewer, yeah. I agree with, I think what Stacy's saying is we see some stabilization in our funds at this point. I would be probably just a little less, not less optimistic. I really want to see the reports from the meters.
Yeah.
Really see what, and I think, Stacy, where are we at about, the large meters, are we at around 90% ordered?
Yes, we are at almost 93% ordered. We're
So
pretty high up there, but the installation hasn't occurred on all of them.
So we still set through the end of this year.
Yes.
That was our goal. So I think it will probably have to wait until the beginning of the second quarter of 2015, I would think, to really gauge if we've seen an uptick. I'm optimistic that we will. I want to see it, to really start hanging our hats on it. But at least it is positive that we will have those changed out, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to see a significant increase.
And if I could just ask Greg, also though, in the sewer fund, what we really need to keep in mind is, and I know I said it last week, I just want to say it again because it is very important, is that if you look in 2015, if you look at that red under, surplus deficit, every year, regardless of if we pass a rate or we don't, we're deficit spending $1 million. So we are spending more than we take in. Lucky for us, we had a surplus. We are expending it every year, ever since that $1.80 got reallocated to the water. So, if it's not passing a rate increase, maybe it's getting that $1 million that was taken away back here to just cover our cost right there. And if we did get that $1.80, reallocated, not back, but just put to the sewer fund, then we could cover our costs. That would help, because if we are at $1 million, $935,025, and that $1.80 equivalent out to $1 million. So if we could just restructure that fund, the rates, we can at least cover those costs. We won't be able to cover future investments, but we'll cover what we need today to survive, which right now we are not covering.
In essence, then, by the second quarter, we could have a good thought process of a timetable to really, in 2015, maybe take the whole $1.80 at some point that year and not impact the water fund. Is that kind of something we could look at? Put it back, and then 2016 we would have $1 million, or is it something we need to push back a couple more years to 2017?
Well, I don't think we can take it from the water fund because the water fund is in a deficit today. So we can't move the $1.80, but I'm saying that we need to add an additional $1.80 to sewer just to cover what was taken. So that money was taken from sewer and put to water to help the residents, but also help the city cover the water fund deficits. But now what we did was cause a major imbalance in sewer. So to get a structure that works for the city, we would need to get the $1.80 added to the bill, and then work on that EPA structure, or EPA fee.
We need two
Yes,
$1.85s, is what you're saying.
yes,
One
we
in
need
water,
that in
one in
water
sewer.
and one in sewer.
I suppose what Stacy, and she kind of just said it, and it's maybe it struck me as, and I think it's pretty obvious, we're spending more than we're taking in.
And we're at a minimum. I just want
Right
to
now.
clarify that. Our water
In
Right,
both
right,
funds.
minimum.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we've done things, responsible things, and a deficit situation has been put out there in a more manageable way, but it's still a little bit, is what I think you say.
yes.
Kenny, any questions?
Sell water.
That's all I can say. There is no other resource to fix the water fund other than digging into other people's pockets than to somehow, some way,
We need-
get our water on the market.
We need revenue, we need more customers. At our last meeting, we talked about our customer base shrinking. That's obviously contributing.
I think next time you go to a Port Authority meeting, maybe you can get an update on the old William Still property. A lot of rumors still floating around. There's a lot of water down there we could sell if we get somebody down there. And I mean, there's some rumors, of course, they've been flying around for the last 2 or 3 years, and like Teddy says, we need new customers, and William Still really hurt us. Gary would say probably over $1 million that we have to make up. My poor senior citizens. So just get a little update, maybe talk with Mr. Security, so how far it's coming, how far it's going.
I can say, Kenny, that we will have more to say about that at our economic development committee meeting. And what our plans are.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
I'm willing to do that.
Thank you.
I'll ask anyone, anything.
Yeah,
To get us more.
I want something concrete.
Yeah.
I want it in my hands.
On the water and sewer funds, I don't think we should do anything until the new meters come in. And on the general fund, the forecast was made at the beginning of the year, and it shows the deficit about $992,000. But isn't it true that that deficit really doesn't even exist right now, based on money we collected? Our revenue's up $500,000, our expenses are down $450,000. The year ended at the end of September 30th, we wouldn't have a deficit in general fund, is that correct?
Because of our cash position.
Correct.
Because we're getting more cash flow.
But it's kind of misleading to say we're going to have this big deficit of almost $1 million this year, and then come December, everybody's going to say, you don't have a deficit.
How does that, Stacy,
Well-
when we look at our expenditures, we're at 3/4 of the year, so one would reasonably expect 75% of our budget, but we're 71 to 72%, so we're arguably running leaner.
Yes,
We're
we
not
are.
spending as much. How does that dovetail to what Mike is saying?
I think that's a fair point, definitely. What you have to keep in mind, though, is that we've encumbered funds based on what our department heads have told us, based on what, people are saying they need. A lot of times at year end, depending on what size company we're doing business with or who our vendors are, all the invoices come at the end of the year. Right now, the expenses are down. You're right, it doesn't seem like we've spent a lot, but we use this 992, and this is what we're planning for. So all I can do is plan. This is a very conservative plan. If I come in 500,000 under this plan, fabulous.
And we'll
This is a very
reconcile,
conservative number.
and we'll reconcile the books at the end of the year,
Yes.
and this will change that.
On November 15th, that's so very close to
This
the
would be
next
different.
month,
Based on
we'll
the
have
year.
what the real deficit is.
Right, but, today's going to write that we got $1 million deficit in the general fund, and we really don't have that today unless everything falls through the floor in the last 3 months of the year, because we're $550,000 ahead of our budgeted revenues. If we're truly at $1 million deficit in the general fund, then Judge Massio was right. What are we doing floating bonds when the funds are going broke?
Well, that's deficit spending. general fund. So we still have $1 million balance is what we're showing. The biggest part of this though is that this year we plan to spend this much money. This year for what we carried over and what we're spending. That's what we planned for this year.
I understand that's what we planned.
Okay.
I think it's misleading to the public to say we're gonna have this $1 million deficit when in 3 months, I doubt very seriously we have a deficit,
Yeah.
or it's gonna be small. And we started the year with 1.9 million. Right now, we're probably even, and in the expenses, 194,000 went to the rainy day fund. So, had we not done that, we're probably even more ahead. But I just want to point that out. So,
I think we're dealing with two different, you're right, we're dealing with, we know what our budget says and what we projected. Now, reality is, we're doing better.
we're doing
Yes,
better.
we
So
are doing better.
the public shouldn't be shocked at the end of the year
And then we'll
when our
reconcile.
deficit's totally wiped out. And
It should be better than what we're showing now. I would
Yes.
agree. It
Because-
should be better.
later in the agenda, we're going to talk about possible increases, how to increase the general fund. And I think that does, the general fund is basically, we're spending exactly what we're bringing in this year, but that impacts on what kind of revenues we should be generating, or additional revenues.
Yes, but we also don't want to get too complacent where we're giving $1 million. Okay, say we only have a $500,000 deficit spending for this year. Well, we're still deficit spending, period. So I guess that's where the general fund shortage comes in. If we have a full carryover, we'll have a carryover. We already have $1 million balance today.
Right.
But we're gonna have carryover, but the issue is the red, which is we shouldn't be deficit spending at all.
I agree, we should not deficit
Yes.
spend at all. And I guess the question will be in December, did we really deficit spend this
Yes,
year?
yes,
Right.
I agree. And I just wouldn't feel comfortable changing that number today based on 3/4 of the year, knowing that we still have a couple big things we're buying. We've already budgeted for them, but we just need, it's,
You could let it play out.
Yes,
See what-
we amended the budget at the quarter, and this was what we came up with when we amended it at the quarter. So I wouldn't want to misguidingly tell you that we don't have this, that we have more than we don't. I'd rather err on the other side.
Strategic bookkeeping.
Very conservative bookkeeping.
Since we're talking about big events towards the end of the year, buys and so forth, so where are we at with that, Tim? Well, we know it's gonna be over $100, I think, but.
90?
I don't have the exact dollar. I did budget and set it out with Bob. We put the money in the budget. I'd have
We don't know
to
the highest amount.
consult to my books to what we actually budgeted, but we did spread it out among 2 funds. We get some Ohio Highway Safety Fund money from the state. We were able to allocate about 20% of it to that fund, which does take some of the burden off of our
Yeah,
general fund.
last year it was 36.
It's gonna
A
be
ton.
95.
I think we're at 85 to 95 right
Yeah.
now. And actually, Bob Barrett really did a tremendous job on behalf of the city in negotiating, working with private suppliers, working with ODOT, really making the system, putting us in the best position. And we're in a better position than, I know a number of communities, it's still going to be significantly higher. But I'm hopeful that it's not as, we did about as good as we could do, given the conditions this year. But I'd say somewhere in the 85 to 95 range per ton. Which is a big increase, but we budgeted for it.
Bob?
Yeah, we talked about the water fund there. The delinquents, when we talked, you said there was an active delinquent account. We only have 160,000.
Yes.
Is that right? Now, what other kind of delinquent accounts do we have? Because I didn't really understand that.
What I was speaking about is I've heard, I think John Hughes thrown out there something about $3 million, $2 million, something like that. So I don't know anything about that number. That's what I wanted to clarify, is that the only delinquency number that our utility office can focus on is the $160,000. Which that day is when I ran the report. Today it might be lower, it might be a little higher. It's around there. Now I'm saying that's the only money that we can collect on. Yes, we've sent all the liens in, that's all been done to the county. Now that money is on the county's books. Hopefully we get that money eventually. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not counting on that money for anything because it might take a while.
I'm saying active accounts,
Active accounts
the ones that people.
that people owe us money, like they today have a water account, they're not paying their bill, they're 90 days late. That money we're actively collecting on, that's
Okay.
delinquencies.
If we have an account that's 90 days or longer, then what kind of account do we call that?
We still call that an active account.
That's
An
still-
account in our system that we feel we can collect the money on. If you file bankruptcy, we have to write that off. So that money we'll never get. So the city has to just pay for it. That's what happens. It's
Okay.
write off.
At what point will we quit collecting? Well, we will not quit collecting, we'll quit trying to collect it.
If a bankruptcy court tells us no, if somebody dies, or if we send it to a collections agency, and then it's off of our books. But the money that our city can collect on today, that's outstanding, is $160,000.
Do we know how much money that we have in the collection agency? And I'm not going back 10 years, I mean, just recent, do we know how much?
I can tell you the number's very little. It's very little because what happens is if it goes to the collection agency, then we lose that money. I mean, we have to pay them interest, fees, whatever. So we wouldn't submit an account to collections unless it's close to over a year old. And then the city, say they've moved away. If they've moved, then we send that account to collections because, we're not going to be able to find them to get the money. We don't have any means to collect it. But if they're still using our water services, we are actively trying to collect on that.
And how much money do we have in the liens? How much?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you we submitted, I think, 80 liens, 70 to 80 liens, and that was on water, sewer, and refuse. So 70 times 3, 210 roughly liens on each area total, which was pretty high as far as municipalities go. I think that's pretty high.
You said 80 liens?
80. And if people have come in to pay them, the problem is that we can't get that money now. I think next year, this is my first year doing it, we maybe didn't do it as clear in the past. What we're going to do next year is send out letters a month, 2 months ahead of time and say we are filing a lien. Because after we filed the liens, people came in to pay. But now it's with the county, so we can't accept the money. So, this is a work in progress. We're trying to get better every single year, and we are.
But you'd send, if they come in to pay the money, you'd send them to the county and they pay the county.
Yes,
the money.
yes, they have to pay the county, and then it eventually comes to us. But in the future, I think if we give them the warning, hey, we filed a lien, people will come in and pay us, and it's just on our books immediately, as opposed to waiting, the county doesn't, so the county sends them to us in one lump sum towards the end of the year. Next year, not this year.
So just so I understand, that we only have active delinquent accounts and then
Yes.
everything else is pertaining to the liens or,
Yes,
and you say there's not that much, not the liens, the other accounts were just.
yes. So, just to put it into perspective, and as a matter of fact, I did mention that our revenue was a little bit up. We did project a good $535,000 shortfall in the water fund. I believe when I ran it last, we were like 469, so it is improving. They're still low. Revenue's still down. But the way to put it in perspective, it's still 439,000 down. But what I'm telling you is that collections of 160 is not enough to make up that number. So, yes, we should focus on collections, and believe me, the utility department, they are focusing on collections, but that $160,000 outstanding isn't going to make up what's lost. To summarize. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just have a question. I'm in total agreement. The projected deficit of 992.
Yes,
But we still, as pointed out by Mike, have a cash carryover of 947,
Yes.
almost $1 million, $950,000. That's not anticipating any, since we're self-insured from the insurance fund, going to back to the general fund. Because last year, as you all know, the council's aware, what helped us out in the carryover that we had was being self-insured. I know that's a risk, and
yes.
we're looking at that, but is any of that projected in here?
No,
Okay,
no.
so we still have that, and from my understanding, that is still healthy?
Yes, 200,000 on the plus side. However, I mean,
You can have, I know.
yeah, and you have to factor in at the end of the year, a lot of people's deductible goes through January 1st, plus we're pondering changing health plans, that if I, most people go to the doctor at the end of the year knowing that I have a deductible to satisfy, or maybe I've already satisfied throughout the year, so we were actually going to the doctor. So that's why we don't make adjustments
And that
for that.
happened.
That's the reason why we don't. We
Right,
stay
and
conservative.
that happened last year, but my point is, although we're projecting a 947 carryover for 14 and into 15, that could be higher, 200, 300,000, whatever, from the hospitalization.
Yes.
So if it comes out to be $1.2 million, $1.3 million carryover to 15, I don't want people to be caught off guard or surprised by that.
I hope it is. I
hope so,
believe
too.
it will be, but
I do too, but
conservative.
And that's what I said, Dawn, I mean, we're 550,000 ahead in revenue, so when you add that to it, and your 200,000, or that 900,000 carryover is now more like 1.5 to 1.6 million.
correct. And that's why I was trying to support what you were getting at, Mr. Johnson.
We also get rebate from workers' comp that goes to the safety fund.
I do just want to add, is the next thing funding issues? Or
No, it's
oh,
budget
okay.
amendments, and I was gonna have you just dovetail right into budget amendments, since you're operating it
Okay.
off.
Tim, maybe you could help me out on this. I think the only two budget amendments coming out of finance are Parks and Rec was changing, or is that, should I talk about that?
Yes.
Okay. That making a TO change, they had a maintenance worker 3, and they've determined there's no need for a maintenance worker 3 in the city. That would have been the only one on the books anyway, so we're just making a, basically just a smart decision, save the city some money, and, bring in what we need, which is an MW2, so maintenance worker 2.
And I think Stacy, Mary Beth pretty much evaluated her staffing,
Yes.
and that's what you see. We'll see in this legislation that there's some positions that are being removed, we just don't use them, and also going from a maintenance worker 3 to 2, if it's a better fit for that, the operations in Parks and Rec, so, and it does save us some money.
And Kenny has that legislation to bring in tonight, and he has a list of the workers and how that will be who will be eliminated and be changed to MW2.
And what was the other?
The other one is the health broker. The legislation is just going to allow Tim to actually enter into the contract and go out and solicit bids.
That's bids for plans, because we already have a broker, is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
that'll be allowing the broker and Tim on our behalf to go out and advertise.
Well,
Who's our broker at this point?
Our broker is Ohio Insurance Services.
Any questions on the
we would
budget
ask-
amendments?
We would ask on the insurance that be done as an emergency. I think there's potential cost savings, and also, given this time, we're in the fourth quarter. If we're going to have a new health plan, and give them time to evaluate self-insured versus traditional, I would ask that we move forward.
Okay, and because we want to kind of have a new plan in place January 1. is that the
Yes.
goal?
Yeah.
Yes. Also, the MW3 to MW2, I would just ask that that be done by emergency too. And that being that it's almost winter time, Mary Beth could really use somebody in there for the winterizing of the equipment and everything immediately. So if we don't make the TO change, we'd have to wait a while.
Kenny?
Gotcha.
Mike Bush, you okay with that? And as chair of Parks and Rec as well? Okay. Members, Finance Committee, we're okay with bringing both in as emergencies. Health insurance is definitely important because we do want to look at what we could save for 2015.
I have one question on that.
Yes.
Does our health cost containment committee have to approve if we go from self-insured to another plan?
What will happen is, once the health broker takes a look at it and reports back to Tim, then we'll, and if there is going to be a change, then we would go to the health care.
They would have to approve it
Yeah.
before it came to us.
And we would go over it and have them approve it, yes.
Members of the council, these two, which would be sunshine this evening, any questions or comments?
I want to hear that, I've got to hear that ordinance before I say one way or the other with the emergency.
Both ordinances, I'll read the health one, then Kenny read the one out of Parks and Rec. The health one is basically authorizing Tim to advertise for bids for hospitalization, medical, surgical benefits, and major medical benefits for the officers and employees of the city of Steubenville, subject to the right to reject any and all bids, authorizing entering into the contract upon approval of lowest and best bid and declaring emergency. That's the
And the
legislation.
emergency part would be for what reason?
To get our worker to get a plan in place for us by January 1, which will allow for cost savings into 2015's budget.
And the other one was for
The other one
And I'll let
is,
Kenny do that.
the other one is an ordinance under Park and Rec to change the TO to delete 2 seasonal assistant head lifeguards, 1 seasonal head lifeguard, 1 summer food coordinator, 2 summer food kitchen staff, and 1 maintenance 3 worker, and then to add 1 maintenance 2 worker. And the reason it would be under emergency, Bob, was so we could get the maintenance 2 worker hired before the end of the year if possible.
So everybody that you're talking about is already not here.
They're already not here. We're just changing
Even
the
the
name of.
maintenance 3 worker is
Correct.
not here.
The maintenance 3 bid up to the supervisor.
Correct.
So that position is vacant.
Correct.
I think I filled out.
So all you're doing is switching dollars.
That would answer.
And there's a cost savings from MWM3 to M2.
Only 2 people on recreation. Is that right, Kenny?
Yes, sir.
Only 2 people on recreation and maintenance? If you eliminate one,
Yes,
I believe so.
yes.
You're eliminating your position that's not filled with the
there's
moment.
more volunteers.
Okay.
We did utilize the street workers somewhat this summer for grass cutting and different things a little bit when needed. Yeah, a little bit, not much. So with them being under Mr. Bridge, correct, and in the neighborhood parks and things like that, we were able to use this.
Does that help answer questions for council? Okay. All right, next subject is House Bill 5 updates. And I believe that's what is in front of us from the county municipal league. Mayor, did you want to address this one?
I'm going to go right ahead. I'll add my,
Gary, did you want to go into?
yeah.
Working, all right, I just want to make sure, I didn't want to step up. I didn't read it, that's why I asked, I just thought.
No, I just tweeted it out.
I didn't read
tweeted
it.
out. I didn't know if you guys wanted me to speak on it. We did pass that ordinance. I did mention that to you guys before. We are in the process of drafting a letter. I need to figure out who that's supposed to go to.
Mr. O'Schlager, that's who Senator Gentile asked us to
Okay.
go to. And that was my only question on this particular subject is where we were with this, spelling and all that stuff. Mayor, can you help Stacy with that?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I can take a lot of
So we can
it.
get this out.
I took a lot of it off of our ordinance we passed,
Thank you.
so I think we'll be fine there. And then, the biggest update that I saw is really nothing's changed. I read all the municipal league stuff. Gary's done a great job about keeping me informed. Doesn't sound like too much has happened with it. But these are, if you're interested, this is, you know, what people are agreeing on in it and what they're not, the major concerns that municipalities have, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. It is front and back, the stuff on the back's all the bad stuff. Just so you know, don't read all the compromises on the front, it's both.
Gary, Mayor, when do they get back in session? Is it November, right after the elections?
Yeah, they're supposed to be going back in session
Next week.
next week.
Next
Or
week,
maybe right.
or right after the elections, after the elections, okay.
Talking to the municipal, Sue Cave, she's informed me that nothing's gonna happen before the election, but after the election, I think that's why they're encouraging all the municipalities to really
Can we,
don't forget about this issue, because in November, December, it could happen. And it looks like it is gonna happen, and it's gonna be horrible for us. I mean, we're gonna be sitting back in here, you know, in 2015, looking at our budget forecasts and how our revenues are gonna come in. It's horrible.
can we have a copy of it? Stacy will have, go to Senator Gentile and State Representative Jack Sarah, and of course the Highness Lake, just so that way they know that we've done from that meeting what they asked.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Thank you. I'm going to do a curveball in here. Is the general fund future funding options is going to take up the most of the rest of the discussion. I think is important. Number 6 and number 7, I think we've already talked about the update on health insurance, unless there's anything else that we need. I'm going to eliminate that. The 2015 budget adoption schedule, we went over that yesterday. Just as a reminder, tomorrow we have our second wave of budget meetings, budget hearings. November 6th will be the third and final. November 13th, Finance Committee will meet specifically dealing only with that subject. 12/2, December 2nd, we expect to sunshine our 2015 permanent budget. December 16th, we will hold a special meeting to pass that legislation. That is the schedule. Which leads us then, the next 42 minutes, to talk about the general fund and future funding options. This council has had several meetings dealing with what we've talked about previously here earlier tonight, is general fund deficits in the future years. A lot of it dealing with costs of our safety forces, and we definitely need our safety forces in our city. So we've been looking at options. They're presented to us tonight, some of which are, well, a lot of it is increases, some are, but we do have, Stacy presented us a lot of different things. We're going to be talking about a safety levy. We're going to talk about a potential increase in income tax wage this evening, and we're going to talk about rolling back at least 50% of the income tax credit that we currently offer. And always will be accretive to the budget. We just got to decide going forward which combination is best suited for us. The income tax levy, should that be council's decision to move forward with that, obviously goes in front of the voters, all the voters. And the income wage tax increase would also be put in front of the electorate. And the goals for either one of those would be the May 2015 primary election. Okay. Kenny, I know you've got something.
I got a question for Stacy. And looking at all these ways to increase the general fund, I've been thinking about this. I think all the council since I've been here has talked about how the piggyback tax, the sales tax, Jefferson County goes directly to the county, when 80% of the sales tax is probably around that. I can't be exactly sure. collected in the city of Steubenville. My question to you, Stacy, is there a way, 7.5%, I believe right now, sales tax, is there a way to put a 0.25% sales tax inside the city limits to be collected with the piggyback tax, and then we get that 0.25%? There's no way to do that?
Your fellows agree with
Yeah,
that.
I don't think.
Statute won't allow that.
Statute won't allow us.
And at the same time, there's no way for us to try to receive some of that piggyback tax from the county.
I mean, there's so many councils that have asked that question. That'd be out of the goodness of their heart.
Is that because the revised code earmarks for county operations?
Yes, the revised code has, it lists all the ways and means you can tax, and it gives them the right for the sales tax. And that was one of the first things that I looked at 26 years ago, was about getting a piece of that and calling up to John Gotham and legal counsel for the municipalities. He just laughed because you can't.
You can't create your own city sales tax either?
It's not in the, unless Stacy,
I don't know, I think my thoughts are
I've never-
something definitely to research. I know schools are doing some creative ways to fund through income taxes.
Yeah, because by statute, they're allowed to
Right.
go
Yeah.
through income tax. Everything we do is by statute.
Schools are property tax and have the ability to do income tax. Counties are sales tax, and particularly cities are income taxes. We get about, 10 cents on the dollar or,
Less than that,
for,
8 cents.
yeah,
For
property tax.
For property.
Yeah.
So much for that idea.
The idea, then I'll get to you on, Kenny's idea is well thought, because what we were thinking about is, this is for maintaining, but also I believe increasing the goal, increasing our safety forces, protect our citizens. And being that most of the general fund is made up of salaries and wages for that, that's, the burden was with the safety levy, the burden goes on the property owners, our residents who own properties in the city. The income tax is a way to level that playing field, in a sense, gets us on people who are employed, both that live in the city, but also that don't live in the city but work here in the city and utilize our police and fire. Kenny's approach is to take that step that I had thought about with the income tax levy even further for those that just come here and visit and shop. So the idea is we're trying to look for ways to basically spread the burden out on that. That's why Kenny brought that up. I thought that was a very good idea.
Everybody knows that our tax base is shrunk because, again, we say 18,000 people, we probably got 4,000 people that are working and paying taxes in the city. So my thought, again, was to try to get the people that utilize our safety forces, which are, somebody comes from Wintersville, has an accident, our police and fire respond, and so on and so on. And just, if they're at the mall shopping and there's a problem there, we respond. So that was my idea, to try to get some of the outside people to help fund the safety forces.
You did.
Kenny, I've been trying to back for the past 20, 25 years. I think we pay almost all of the piggyback tax, but all I just want is our fair share. And I don't want to make any ruffles because right now we're working real good with the county commissioners. So I'll keep quiet till the appropriate time, but I think that's a good idea because most of our businesses in the West End, they take all of our money and all of our kids. So that's it. So I think on down the road, we'll have to explore to make sure we're getting our fair share of the pigback tax.
How do you change it?
I don't know.
You just talked about the municipal league taking our money and giving
What is
it,
taking our money?
refunded it to us, so they're changing it. The state level's changing things. How do we change it? How do we go about changing it?
Through legislation.
Isn't that what we are, legislators?
But
We're not a state.
on the state level.
Well, again, they're doing it to us.
Representatives and senators. And of course, the governor has the
Stacy and her team have really worked diligently, very hard on these different ideas for us. So let's have Stacy go through this front sheets that she has for us, and then we'll go and ask some more questions. Go ahead, Stacy.
Well, what I'd like to do is, I just want to start with this pie chart. I know you guys have all seen this. I just want you to focus on the largest pieces of the pie, that being police and fire services. Those are your major impacts to the general fund. So, you know, when we look at the future funding options, that's what it's for. You know, it's not necessarily the, you know, small things within the city that we're trying to fund with this extra money. It's all related to police and fire. Every penny related to these would go to police and fire services easily. I mean, if you started with the front sheet that I gave you, I put on here the goal is to increase the general fund revenue by $750,000 to $1 million. I believe you'd need $750,000 to continue the status quo, which is what we have right now. For us to increase our safety forces, which I know a lot of our residents are pushing for, and to increase our patrols, to, you know, allow us to have funds to match the COPS grant, where the state's willing to pay 75%. We just have to come up with a few dollars in between. You know, these are our options for it. So with that being said, I would say the goal to move us forward would be more on the $1 million side. And to do that, you know, here's the options. I laid them out as clear as I could. Kenny, I like your idea. I hope that all of you, you know, are racking your brains too, because even if we can't do it, you know, anything helps. Ideas are welcome, definitely. Anything you can think of. If you start with the very first one, this is the easiest path. I don't know how favorable it will be amongst members in the community or people that work here, but I will say that a 0.25% increase would be the easiest path. We would immediately see a 1.1 increase in revenue. That is just, I would call it increasing the income tax rate. Most of you know it as the wage tax. This doesn't affect your, you know, inheritance or anything else. This is just the wages you earn in the city of Steubenville, and it would affect it by 0.25%, which is pretty small. Greg, I think you had an exact number of.
Well, basically, you go from 2 to 2 1/4. If a family has a income of $50,000, it's $125 a year increase.
I mean, it does. You know, I mean, to me, I guess, as somebody who doesn't live in the city of Steubenville, and, you know, I come here and we talk about water increases and sewer increases. I think this is a way to share the burden. And like you said, you know, I would expect a police officer to help me. I would expect, you know, those things. So, I mean, I can see how this isn't just causing the burden on only our residents here.
If I may, right below there, you got the con. This would
Yes.
make Steubenville less competitive to live, work, as this is on a higher end of municipalities.
Yes,
Wage
that's
tax.
true.
Because we're, just that alone right there, less competitive. Wintersville, the proximity, Toronto with the proximity, I'd be scared that people would leave and move, because they're leaving as it is. I mean, Kenny said, we're stuck with like 4,000 people working as it is, and then people say, listen, it's easier for me to move to Wintersville than pay it.
This, I guess, to focus on though, is a wage. It is wages, and wages earned inside this city. So this would focus on your workers.
If we would get industry, and we would get a couple hundred people from out of state, out of town, out of area come here to work, then that is who would be more,
Yes.
you know, and they're gonna come for the job. I understand if it was a living increase in the city, but this is a wage increase, so that's the big difference.
But also, if they work they're paying a municipal tax up in Pittsburgh, they don't pay it here also, is that right?
They get credits.
They get credit.
They would credit whatever their tax is up there to the tax here.
And
Well,
just,
they're paying 2% in Pittsburgh and 2% in Steubenville, then it goes to Pittsburgh where they live at, is that right?
You pay where you work. Pittsburgh's 1% for non-residents. A better example is Toronto. Toronto's 2%. So Steubenville residents who work at Time Inn, they pay no income tax to the city of Steubenville. Even though they live in Steubenville, they enjoy our police service, our fire service, all the services of the city, they pay no wage and tax to us because they pay to Toronto. That's why, I don't like I don't like any of these, but the one I do like more than the others is the reducing the income tax credit 50%. Because as Stacy says in her note there, 2% is high. There's only a few cities across that are higher than 2%.
So when you say reduce it 50%, you mean that they would pay 1% to Toronto and 1% to Steubenville?
That is, no, they'll pay 2% to Toronto and they'll pay 1% to Steubenville.
unless Toronto has some sort of credit, you know.
But
right
most of the
now-
credits are for residents. So if I worked at Time Met, I pay my 2% to Toronto. If we reduce our credit to 50%, I still pay my 2% to Toronto. But when I file my Steubenville tax return, I pay 1% to Steubenville because my credit's going to be limited by 50%.
Okay, because right now it's 100%.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Now, that line item is down a little bit more, if you want to focus the second to the bottom.
Let's jump down to that one.
That's something that I reached out to our reader representative. I'm not sure really why we ever gave 100% credit. The majority of municipalities across the
They do.
state do not give 100% credit.
I believe they do, the majority. But there's few that give 0.
Yes, that's what I mean. We give 100% right now.
Yeah, well, most cities give 100%. I pulled up all the cities. Most of them give 100%, some give 50%, some give 0.
No credit, okay.
No credit.
Okay,
So if we gave no credit, I'd pay 2% to Toronto and I'd pay 2% to Steubenville.
yes.
The logic, and at least in my mind, the logic behind that is we're charging everybody else 2% to enjoy all our services. And I can live in the city of Steubenville and I don't pay anything even though I work in Toronto. I'm enjoying all my services, my house is in Steubenville, and I'm paying no income tax for any of the services in Steubenville.
Yes. Yeah, so that's what I meant when I said nobody has, I meant they either have 50 or
100,
yes.
yes.
So what we're doing is, I would recommend us switching to the 50% credit. We could do that today with no effort. I believe Gary's not here, but I reached out to a reader rep, and this is mandated by us. We make this policy.
We just take legislation.
Yes, that's what I mean. But we could, we could make that decision now, and we could move on that to be effective next tax year, and that would essentially, be a very small, it's not gonna solve our problems, it's $200,000, but it's $200,000 that would have very little impact.
20% of your goal.
Yes.
Angie?
Can we go back to the other one, Mike? What is it you don't like about the raise in the 0.25%?
I don't like raising the income tax rate because it makes us less competitive. If I work in Pittsburgh, and I have the choice of living in Steubenville, Wintersville, Mingo, and I'm going to base it solely on my tax, I'm not picking Steubenville.
But this is for work,
But
right?
well, we only have so many jobs in Steubenville. We have a big segment of our population who lives in Steubenville and works up in Pittsburgh or outside the city of Steubenville. So the higher we make that tax, the less likely someone in that situation is going to move to Steubenville. If we go to 2, 2.25, 2.5, I can go to Wintersville and pay 1% on my Pittsburgh wages. The higher you raise your tax, the less competitive you become. So when we try to get businesses to come in, they're going to look and they're going to say, do I want to go 2% in Steubenville and the old Wheeling Pit site? Or do I want to go down to Mingo, which is .075? I'll go down to Mingo and use their old mill site. And that's where their profits are going to be paid. I don't like the income tax because it makes us less competitive, and I don't like the property tax because that's an undue burden on the elderly. I don't like the property tax.
I just think of all the people that I work with, they do not live in the city of Steubenville. So I'm thinking that we're gonna get an increase of money from that. People at Eastern Gateway do not live.
They do not live in the city of Steubenville.
No. So an increase, if I'm understanding right, an increase on their income tax wage, that means they're gonna have to pay because they work in Steubenville.
Oh, yes, they will.
So why can't we get, they don't live here.
Right, well, you raise the rates, you're gonna get everybody. You're gonna get the non-residents pay more, the residents pay more, and the businesses will pay more. But at some
So
point,
it's just non-competitive for bringing business, not for people moving, because they're not, it doesn't matter if they live here or not. It's
Well-
on whether people are gonna pay to live here.
the ones working at EGCC on Sunset, yeah, and live outside the city, it doesn't matter where they live.
Right.
But the ones that would live in Steubenville, that go to Franciscan and decide to stay here, but get their job up in Pittsburgh, up by the airport, or up in Robinson, you know, they may say, I'm not gonna live in Steubenville, I'll go live in Toronto, I'll go live in Mingo, I'll go live in Wintersville, because it's gonna be cheaper for me. I have to pay more than double my tax if I live in Steubenville than I would if I live in Wintersville. And they still, Wintersville, Steubenville, you're still in the same area, they still,
I'm confused then, because I thought this was solely on their income. What am I missing?
Tim, go ahead.
Well, just one point in the competitiveness discussion. You know, when we're attracting businesses, certainly income tax is one variable. However, you know, we also, when we put a package together to either attract businesses or help existing businesses to expand, you know, there will be property tax incentives, perhaps, or not. Quality of our schools is another variable. Cost of our utilities, our services. So it's income tax is one of them. I would just say that there's a number of variables they look at. But I think a lot of businesses are going to look at some of those other ones. It's probably more the people that work there that are going to be impacted by the income tax, regardless. But then again, you know, what we're talking about too is getting value for that. We're talking about adding 2 to 3 police officers. There will be, you know, we will give a value for that. On your question, Angie, it is on where you work. So, but it's a wage tax. It would just depend on where what other communities, where they work, other credits.
Where they have, okay.
It varies, I guess, with a lot of different situations.
And I'll take it in Mike's example. Mike lives here in Steubenville, works at time at Toronto. Right now he's paying Toronto the 2%. So, you know, if he's making $50,000 a year, he's paying them $1,000.
If we went up to 2.25.
Right, bear with me 1 second.
Yeah.
Stacy's recommendation is to roll back 50%. So he would still pay Toronto $1,000 only. He would pay the city of Steubenville $500. Okay. Now, we increased it to a quarter. The increase on $50,000 is $125. Okay, but he would then be responsible for 50% of that $125 if we do a 50% rollback. So that would be what, $62.50 there. So in that essence, even if we increase it for the citizens who live here, who work outside the city, it's not a 50% increase at that 25 basis points. Makes sense. Fair point. Yes.
We're talking about who's paying taxes and who's not paying taxes.
Because you're not paying taxes.
You know, first of all, we got 18,000 people, 2,000 people are college students, they don't contribute anything. The other probably 25% or 40% are people who receive some sort of federal check and they don't pay any tax at all. No state, no federal, no city, and we service them. So all we're doing is going to be punishing the 2,000 or 3,000 people who pay tax, and we're gonna have somebody paying more, there's no jobs here. So I think it's a no-win situation. We're talking about raising taxes. I don't think that's the answer. I think we need some jobs here, and I don't see any money in the near future.
Yeah, before I go on, and I know what you mean, what you're saying about the students. They may not be employed
You know,
per
but they
se,
spend money.
but they do spend money, so
They spend a lot of money.
they do contribute to the
I
community.
wish we had more of them.
Yes, I want you to understand they do,
I'm
and that's,
working on it.
our university does provide a lot for this community. But I understood where you were going from, I know you weren't slating that. Mike,
And you list all these options on how we can raise additional revenue. Now, has any thought been given to where we can consolidate services, save on expenses? Do we have the proper size safety forces? I think we could use some more police, and any tax increase we have, I would be for only if a portion of that was dedicated to the police. But we currently have more firemen than policemen in this city. So, has any study, has anybody looked in, if we consolidate with the county on the health department, that eliminates, well, to just go back one step, there's only 125 health departments in the state of Ohio. Every county has one, there's 88. So now the other 37 are cities. Cities are phasing out. Each health district has to have a health commissioner, has to have a nursing director, and has to have an environmental health director. So we have those three positions, which I estimate cost us $175,000. The county has those three positions. So if everything else was the same and you just took the leaders, you only need one. If you have one health district, you only need those positions one time. We would save $175,000. Now, I say the fire we have 40 people. I'm not advocating for anybody to lose their jobs, but we need to transition with retirements. The city of Alliance, which is bigger than us, but I believe kind of like similar to us in makeup. It's a similar type of town. They only have 30 firemen. They spend $2.7 million a year on their fire protection. They're 9 square miles, we're 10 square miles. So before we go and vote on any tax increase, I think we need to look at our expenditures and are they the right size? Do we want 40 firemen? That's fine if we do. But can we transition to 30 firemen? Has anybody in the city said maybe 30 is a better number than 40? Yes, Stacy.
Just to clarify, we have 33 firemen and I believe almost 40 with the grant. The grant's paying for 6. So 33, and then I believe the chief would be 34, and then 6 with the grant. That's what puts us at the 40.
Right. We're at 40 right now.
Yes.
I assume
I would
a year and a
advocate
half.
for a study. 100%. I don't.
But would you say like each fireman position costs the city, what, $70,000?
70,000, 77,000.
Probably on average, yes.
So if we have 33, I thought we had 34 without counting the safer grant people, but if we get down to 30, that's $300,000. So that's $300,000, there's 175 at the health department, we're at 500,000, 200,000 if we do a 50% credit, there's 700,000. We're getting close to the number you guys want to come up with, without raising the income tax. I had one other thought, but I guess it escapes me right now. Take Alliance. And there's other things which I think are more appropriate to talk in executive as we get ready for the contracts, where we can talk about certain things that are in there. But like the Alliance example, they have one fire chief, we have one fire chief. They have one assistant fire chief, we have 3. So I think all that stuff needs to be evaluated. Like I said, I'm not saying go to a number today and you're either at that number and everybody else gets laid off, but we need to look into the future and transition because the population continues to dwindle, and we should have the right safety forces for the town, for the size of our town and our problems of our town. And our problems are more criminal, and I think we need more police and less firemen.
just so we understand, I think that's why it's very important what we're doing with these budget hearings. We're talking about the expenses. This is getting us something we've never done before. And these budget hearings are going to allow us to ask those pertinent questions. Are we cutting enough? Are you cutting enough? Are you asking for more than what we can offer type thing? Budget hearings are important. And the second thing there is the health department. That study, we should know something about a year from now. Is that correct?
As it was reported yesterday in the budget hearing, the timetable, the grant application is due the first part of December for the feasibility study. We're hoping that within the first 6 months of 2014, that will move along, and then, of course, implementation of it. But I believe they'll be prepared to implement and move forward with the recommendation if agreed upon by both boards by the end of the year for 16.
That's both boards, the independent boards of the health board of the city of Steubenville and health board of Jefferson County. Does it go to commissioner council level at that time? Or
Go to,
the commissioners or final?
not the
council?
officers, but it will come to this board,
It will come to the
to
city
this
council.
council.
Okay, all right. I apologize, Gary.
Well,
Now,
the other thing, and the mayor probably knows more, if you do disband your health board or your health services, then we still have to contribute to the.
Oh, there's a per cap per
Right,
citizen,
I agree.
and it's about $30 a person going, so that would be 18,500, I believe 56 population, you go by your census count, but it would be a per head count. And that's why the feasibility study is going to be very valuable to us. As it was reported by the health commissioner yesterday at the budget hearing, they requested salaries, positions, the whole operation. So everything in this feasibility study will be taken under consideration. Hopefully, when whatever consolidation or plan is put into effect, we'll be able to save on that per cap per citizen.
Fine.
Yeah, just to reiterate a little bit what Mike said, but I'm not in favor at all of going to the taxpayer, again, the property owner, for what's going on here, because they're experiencing the same things that the city's experiencing. Now, I think the budget hearings are a great idea where we can cut some of the, take some of the meat that's left on the bone off, because we have to really show that we're serious about making cuts before I ask anybody else to make the cuts. And is there meat on the bone? That's, the budget hearings will tell us, you know, if there is. And I'm just not, I'd like to wait until that's all over before any decision is made, because I just don't, the government always wants to run to the taxpayer to do it, and that's not the answer, to me anyways. I think we need to actively search. I'm a big proponent of the Port Authority. I think that just a little bit of time, they can bring some jobs into the town, which would help tremendously. We need more water customers. As it is now, people are leaving. We're not gaining anybody. We're leaving. We're losing people every, and I just don't see any of these options that are viable to keep anybody here. Now, do we need to do something? Something has to be done, but I just think we need a little bit more hard work to try to.
Mr. McCaffrey, if I may, these are basically proposals on alternative funding. Let's be clear that all except the tax credit that council could enact, the $199,000, 50%. Any of the other options have to be approved by the voters of the city of Steubenville, not this council.
And the voters are who, Mayor?
See, our voters.
Only the property owners? Only the people that are gonna pay the tax?
Voters,
Everybody?
registered voters in the city of Steubenville.
That's my point. I don't want, somebody said 4,000 people working in the city. I don't want 4,000 people in the city picking up the tab for 17,000. If it was just the property owners that could vote, I'd say, put it up right now, but that's my problem right there.
Well, to be a registered voter, you have to live inside the city of Steubenville.
I understand.
You may not be employed, but you have to live inside the city of Steubenville. Point well taken. But my question is, it has to, well, first of all, the statement is it has to be approved by the voters of the city of Steubenville if council decides on any of these alternatives except for the 50% tax credit. And I think that would probably be a good start if you start at that. You recommended that several weeks ago.
I recommend it as an option to consider.
Right. Now, the other thing is if council is going to consider, say, the wage tax, it's 2% now. The proposal says 2.25, a quarter of a percent increase. I would say that the voters may be more acceptable in accepting it, and I know their frustration out there, is if we designate that quarter of a percent for safety forces only. If you can recall, to establish the 2%, the initial 1% council enacted. The following 1%, which was done in two different times, 7/10 and 3/10, the voters had to approve. But in the 7/10, we designated money, $500,000 for street improvements, there's $100,000 for recreation and all. I would suggest council consider, if they want to consider a wage increase, that quarter of a percent be designated strictly for safety forces in our community.
Mayor, and I think that's a phenomenal idea, and I think that's what council had thought about and had discussed previously. This would be a great way to help manage for that cost grant that our police chief had brought to our attention several months back. In my opinion, yes, I think anything we do on these solutions, these funding solutions, should go directly towards our safety forces, period. Yes, Amy?
At the bottom of it, it says that the renewal or a new levy will not be an option until 2017. When will we have to make a decision on whether we want to do that or not? Did you hear me? I'm sorry. I wasn't talking into the mic, I'm sorry. I said at the bottom of the sheet, it says that we would not be able to have the option of doing a renewal or a new levy until 2017. When would we have to make a decision on if we wanted to do that?
That will go in front of the voters in 2016. So we still got a slight bit of time. Mayor, that would be...
For the 5 mil operating
Yes.
levy, to bring it up to the current evaluation and all, you have to wait until it expires, correct? And that's what she's indicating in her note on the bottom. The wage does not have to.
Right, I'm just saying, so in 2017, it would be valid. It would have to be valid for a renewal.
I thought we did it, is it done in the fall, in the general election in 2016? Or is it general election in 2017?
I'm not sure.
I got it.
We need to look at that calendar, we don't want to miss that again.
You don't have to say that, I was just asking.
No, we cannot miss it again, that's not imperative, let's put it out there.
It was in the primary that we missed it, and then we had to pay extra money to
We had
get
to
it
put an extra
in
$100
the general election.
That's correct.
And we lost X number of dollars.
Yeah, we lost what?
$300.
I just want to know what year we have to put it on there. That's all I was saying.
Well, we really have 3 levies. There's a 5 mil operating levy, and then we have the wage levy, the 7/10 and the 3/10.
I was actually just referring to either renewal or if we were going to do something else, the last one, that's all. I'm sorry.
And Mayor, as well too, so these are up for discussions. This is ideas, thoughts that our team has put together for us to consider. I don't think council's ready to act this evening on anything, although I do feel in my mind that the 50% tax credit option is a no-brainer. I think we should really look at considering that as one of the top options to help. It is 20% of the bill. I think council, finance committee should ponder that and talk at our finance meeting as to whether we at least want to implement that. That takes no action under the legislation, and it is be accretive, especially in the beginning of 2015. Is that correct, Tim? 2015 I think that's something we need to look at. Yes, Tim?
Just, I'm sorry, just a quick point on the last item, in talking to Stacy, I think that would go to the vote in 27.
2017, right, so,
And I can just add that it does expire, the 5 mil that we currently have, and that's at a 2.5 mil rate. So it's very outdated. That one expires, and we can't do anything to change that until it expires on 12/31/2017. So I believe we wouldn't be able to put that on the ballot until November of 2017. Mayor, you might know more.
3 more years.
Okay.
And just a quick point, I think that,
Yeah.
some combination of these or is, again, we're anticipating that we would be able to add 2 to 3 additional officers. That's by matching the COPS grant. I don't know, we haven't identified another way to add more officers than this. So that's kind of the nexus there. I think with what we talked about, the health department, or that's a 2015 feasibility study answer. We are, obviously, we talked about we are cutting costs in the general fund. So we'll have to see where that goes. That's a combination. And then lastly, with the comment, and I agree that we are committed to working towards right-sizing our fire department, absolutely, wherever that number is.
Whatever that number is.
We are very committed to doing that. But as the mayor said, this goes to safety forces. That 60% of that pie is where these suggestions would go towards.
So,
Or whatever combination.
and I think the budget hearings are very important, and we, by the middle of November, we'll have finished everything and had our discussion specifically with that budget. So I think spending the next month mulling these options, thinking of some extra ideas, and also seeing where the budget lies will help us as we discuss this at another meeting. And I know we have 2 minutes, Mayor, to the sunshine meeting, so I'm just going to open the floor to any other members of question. Council have questions on this particular topic? No. And then this will be on the agenda for our finance meeting in November, and my goal is to have that on November 18th. Correct on that date? Yes, November 18th. And then that will be after our...
One question.
Yes, Mike.
Tim or Stacy, on the COP grant, for 2014, that's already expired, that deadline's passed, right?
Yes.
So, do you know what the deadline is for like the next year?
No, the chief handles that, but I can find out and email you on it tomorrow if you'd like. I talked to him about it today.
If we could have that for our next meeting, we'll
Yes,
talk about it.
I calculated today, we would need about $133,000 to pay for that.
And that would give us how many police?
3.
3. Thanks.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn the finance meeting.
Second.
Couple minutes.